And here we go. It is time once again for Coffee Talk Live. And if you are listening anywhere else and you wanted to join the live portion, you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Coffee Talk and on Prepper University. That's at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Thanks for joining us here today. As always, I do read through as many of the comments as is reasonable. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chosen to chime in on the live portion here. Being joined today by Miss Kitty, sleeping in the chair behind me, and of course, Granny Smith under my feet here. You can't see Granny, but there she is. Take my word for it. As I go ahead and say hello to some people, Tuck is here. Says, please like, share, and subscribe on both channels. Please do if you don't mind. Helter is here. Dragon is here. Brian and JJ, as well as H12, choosing to say hello. You don't have to say hi, but it's okay if you do. Again, I do try to read through a lot of the comments just for this, especially for the sake of those who are listening and not able to see, so they have an idea of what's going on. Rainy day here today. Rainy day here today, which is good because we needed it. And we get ready to jump off here. And as alluded to in the thumbnail, we'll be talking a little bit about Luigi. Not Luigi from Nintendo, Luigi from Philadelphia. Well, that's where they found him anyways. And of course, that is the assassin of the CEO of United Healthcare. The assassin, or one of the CEOs, because there are several. There's like a panel. Sean is here from Northern Illinois, as well as Puck, looking for cats. So you can see one in the background there. That's Miss Kitty sleeping in the chair, dozing away, which is good for her. Cats will sleep a minimum of 12 hours a day. That is normal. If they're sleeping more than that, there could be an issue. Like if your cat's sleeping 16 hours a day, it could be depression or poor health. But 12 is standard. As we jump off here, and this is going to be an independent article. Puck wants to know if it's snowing in Canada. Well, we get people from Canada watching from time to time. Maybe someone will chime in. So it says, who is Luigi Mangione? What to know about man charged with murder in United Healthcare's CEO shooting death. Is this an AI-generated story? What to know about man charged with murder in United Healthcare CEO's shooting death. That's really bad syntax, especially for a title of a story. I mean, if I could see somebody, nobody's perfect, screwing up something in the body of the story, but blowing the title with a misspelling or syntax, I don't know about that. Anyways, it says a suspect has been named in connection to the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson outside his Manhattan hotel early last Wednesday. Luigi Mangione, who's 26 years old, was spotted eating a meal inside a McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania, Monday morning, and a witness reported him to police. That created a whirlwind of investigation that culminated with him being charged with murder in New York and gun counts in Pennsylvania. He is currently being held in a Pennsylvania jail without bond. Thompson was shot on December 4th outside a hotel in Manhattan. That launched a massive manhunt for the suspect, who eluded police for nearly a week. And I'm surprised, they've been making fun of the idea that people were not giving much cooperation to police, okay? Which obviously there was a lot more cooperation than people realized if someone all the way in Pennsylvania in a McDonald's recognized him and called the police. But first of all, you got blurry video footage photos of a guy in a hoodie and a mask. I'm pretty sure that's like half the people in New York. You, it's not that simple to just identify somebody that way, number one. Number two, the reward is up to $10,000 for information leading to the arrest and conviction. So up to $10,000 is not very impressive. It's really not. Up to, what does that mean? 3,000, 4,000, or anything at all if the case has a problem? Up to $10,000. And Monkey is here. And Bob is here. He says, finally caught one live. Glad you could make it. All People says, wondering if the elites targeted the CEO and made it look like Luigi held a grudge. What if the CEO defied something the elites demanded of him, so they eliminated him? And I had speculated about a lot of that on the first day. I had speculated about a lot of that because I wondered about that, keeping in mind that this CEO, as well as others from United Healthcare, are under investigation currently from the Department of Justice for insider trading. And they're supposed to be going in for interviews. And just like a few days, literally before the Department of Justice announced this, Brian and several other CEOs from that company sold a ton of their stocks. And Brian in particular had never sold United Healthcare stock. So yeah, plenty of speculation to go around. Maybe one of the other CEOs is like, you know what, Brian, he's going to talk. We need to fix something up. Brian's going to talk. Garch says, one more reason not to eat McDonald's. Kimberly has joined us. And All People suggest the CEOs make like 10,000 a minute. Yeah. And Jane is here. Tuck says, up to, hard pass. Too many stories of anonymous tipsters getting their identities leaked. Also, because it's so high profile, if you did spot this person, you might be like, nah, I don't want to get involved. Which, on the other hand, is kind of insulting. And I'll tell you why. They found this kid pretty quick. If I was shot in front of a hotel, I bet you they'd never find out who did it. I bet you they wouldn't even look. Like, oh, well, random violence, act of God, poor guy. And Frankie has joined us. It's kind of funny that when it's a high profile, suddenly everybody wants to get involved. If it's random person in the street, nobody cares. Nobody. It seems that way, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem that way? It's kind of like when, oh God, what is his name? The actor who played the Joker died of an overdose, and they went out and they actually found the dealer who sold to him. Heath Ledger, right? Died of an OD. And they actually tracked down the dealer so that he could see justice. If I died in an overdose in a hotel room somewhere, you think they'd even look for the guy that I might have bought from? Seriously. And Jane says, sending you a Christmas card for you and family and kitties. Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that. And Tuck says, I have a relative who was shot in their own driveway and no one cared. Yeah. But when money talks, bullshit walks. You're talking about a politician, you're talking about a celebrity, or somebody, in this case, high profile because of the kind of money that's attached to it. Oh yeah, they'll find somebody. It goes on to say, on Monday, police responded to a tip from McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania, who said they saw a man who looked like the person of interest in the case. Mangione was eating in the McDonald's when he was recognized by an employee. Officers arrived at the restaurant and began to question him. Police asked the male if he had been to New York recently, and the male became quiet and started to shake, according to criminal complaint filed against him. We didn't think twice about it, Altoona police officer Tyler Frey said of encountering Mangione. We knew that was our guy. And when you hear that from law enforcement, take it with a grain of salt. Really. Take that with a grain of salt. They say that about everyone. They say that about everyone, and many people turn out to be innocent. I had a gut feeling. I've been doing this for years. You've been doing it wrong for years, and your gut feeling is wrong like 70% of the time. But yeah, you keep running with that. You keep running with that. And I mean, this could be the kid. This could be the guy. Well, to me, he's a kid. He's 26. But this could be the guy they're looking for. But I hate that approach. I have issues with that. Kimberly says, same with Matthew Perry. They found the dealer. Yeah. But if you smoked some bad crack and died, or they just write you off. You'd go in a bag and that's it. You know? And JJ says, same with my family, Tuck, but thanks to, talking to Tuck, excuse me. I try to stay out of the side conversations there. But that's incredible. We didn't think twice about it. We knew this was our guy. Sure you did. I knew he was guilty. And again, you know, my wife likes watching those true crime dramas where they interview actual detectives and talk about real stories. And they all say the same thing. Oh, yeah, I had a gut feeling. I've been doing this for 35 years and I knew that was my man. But then it wasn't. And then he says the same thing about 5 other people. And then 10 years down the line, they connect DNA to somebody who's already in jail that was never even interviewed for the crime. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. Monkey says, would a body cam footage help out since the cop got to the Luigi fellow? Or is that archived to hell? Who knows? We'll see, though. It says the officers arrested Mangione after he provided a fake ID car, and a police search revealed he was in possession of a ghost gun that matches the weapon believed to have been used in the assassination-style killing, officials said at a press conference. What do you mean by ghost gun? I thought it was a 9mm pistol. What ghost gun? Is it? It is. I mean, sometimes that refers to a 3D printed weapon, which mostly are useless, or to something that's had its serial numbers scratched out. So they need to specify that a little better. Mangione also had a suppressor for it and several fake ID cards, including New Jersey. Yeah, so this is probably the guy. Quote, he was initially cooperative. He is not now, according to Lieutenant Colonel George Bivens of the Pennsylvania State Police during a press conference. Quote again, he has been arraigned and transported and will be securely housed pending the filing of additional charges in New York. And we'll wait and see whether or not he ends up Epsteined or not. Seriously, as I catch up a couple of comments here, Frankie says, funny how everything is HD 4K, but the stills of new videos is always grainy and distorted, yet they want us to ID a suspect. I know. Kimberly says, didn't they find a partial fingerprint from the shooter? I'm not sure about that. Jericho says it would be something if he allowed himself to just be arrested for fame. Yeah, you never know. There are people who just confess to stuff, and they have nothing to do with it. Jane says Ghost Gun think he made it, but said it kept jamming as he shot. And that could have been because of the suppressor. Ricochet says here in Pennsylvania, everyone is carrying a weapon. Jericho says, and believed. So is it his gun or not? And ghost guns are usually 3D printed and don't last long. You think he would have gotten rid of it by now, too. And Mandanimal said they reported a 3D printed gun. Okay, interesting. I'm surprised he got multiple shots out of it then. That stuff falls apart. And JJ says, guilty or not, looks like the police have their man. And Jane suggests they read somewhere he's been on psych meds when he was younger. I'm not sure about that either. But here we go. Here we go. Ricochet says his family are very wealthy with political ties in Maryland and D.C. That is correct. That is correct. And, you know, I've got that. I've got something about that as well right here, talking about Maryland ties. And it's, you know, it makes him extremely unlikely. actually, unless there's something else connected to this. Something else connected to this. And this is a Tampa Free Press article. United Healthcare CEO murder suspect Luigi Mangione's ties to prominent Maryland family is revealed. So here we go. The 26-year-old arrested in connection with the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has deep roots in a prominent Maryland family with a long history in the Baltimore area. The Mangione family, is it Mangione or Mangione? It might be E if it's like Italian. Mangione. I'm just assuming because I haven't heard it pronounced. Has established a name for itself through various business ventures, including owning and operating several country clubs, healthcare facilities, and real estate companies. I believe there's also nursing homes involved. Among their holdings in Hayesfield Country Club in Hunt Valley, a prestigious golf club and social club. Adding to the family's prominence, Luigi Mangione is the cousin of Maryland Republican delegate Nino Mangione, who represents portions of Baltimore County. Luigi's family history reveals a legacy built by his late grandfather, Nicholas Mangione Sr., a self-made real estate developer with a diverse portfolio. According to the Baltimore Banner, Nicholas Mangione Sr. owned not only country clubs, but also nursing homes and even a radio station. His wife, Mary Mangione, who passed away in 23, was remembered in her obituary for her philanthropic contributions to hospitals and her patronage of the arts. La-di-da. The Mangione family business interests extend across various sectors. In 1978, they acquired Turf Valley Country Club, transforming it into a renowned golf resort and residential community. Their business ventures also include Lauren Health Services, a network of nursing homes, and WCBM AM, a local radio station. So why is this guy going after some CEO of United Healthcare if his family's income relies upon insurance? Interesting. Very interesting. Jane says the shooter had been missing since October of 24 and mom had called the police. Jane says mafia hit. Yeah. Oh, no. But yeah, a lot of side chatter there. A lot of side chatter. Prominent family who relies on healthcare payments for their income. So why would he go after this guy? Why would he go after this guy? The investigation into the murder of Brian Thompson, who was fatally shot outside the Hilton Midtown Hotel in Manhattan on December 4th, remains ongoing. Authorities have not yet released a motive, but the connection between the suspect and the victim, if any, is unclear. It doesn't seem to be. I'm sure there will be. Apparently now also, and I don't have too much information on it, a manifesto has been discovered. Apparently they found, I believe it said a 3-page manifesto, but I don't know what's in it. I don't know what's in it. All People says the media narratives about the Central Park 5 and the West Memphis 3, all lies, no misconduct involved in either case. Ricochet says, how did he know the CEO was going to be at that location at the exact time? Yeah, because that is odd timing. I don't know, was he staying at that hotel or was the conference at that hotel? As I understand it, he was going into the hotel at 6:45 a.m. So yeah, how did he know he was there? Because that's a lot of logistics for some weirdo running around in the streets. JJ says maybe there was something in the works with the insurance company that would be detrimental to the family's business. Who knows? I still suspect that it's possible all of this could have been arranged. Foil hat time, of course. That all of this could have been arranged because of the upcoming Department of Justice investigation, of which Brian was going to have to testify of which Brian was also a suspect, of which Brian also dumped his United Healthcare stock days before the investigation opened up. Again, having never sold any United Healthcare stock before in his entire history. And, you know, all of this has created a firestorm with people. CNN article coming up here, who are championing this person's actions, whoever it was, simply because this was a CEO of a healthcare service provider, without knowing anything further about it. CNN again, 1-star McDonald's reviews and sympathetic merchandise companies try to stop the online support for CEO killer suspect. And yeah, that McDonald's, because a clerk there was recognized him and said, hey, you know, payday, I could get up to, because remember, it's up to $10,000. Maybe they needed the money. Knew the FBI was looking for him. Hey, this looks like the guy. That McDonald's has been bombed with 1-star reviews as a result. Like the McDonald's Corporation had something to do with this. Yeah, and Jane says, yeah, he left a different hotel to go to a conference at another hotel. That's what I thought he was doing. And Tuck says he might be part of a group. He takes the fall. Group scatters until the next gig. That's possible. That's a possibility. But this is how people are acting. Into the article. After police found the words deny, defend, and depose printed on the shell casings near the site where United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down, merchandise bearing those words started to appear online. And again, I believe those are the title of a book on healthcare. The phrase might be linked to a 2010 book critiquing healthcare, the healthcare industry, titled Delay, Deny, Defend. Okay. That's where I'm getting that from. A common description of the industry's tactics. Those words appeared on a number of items on Amazon's store, including hats, t-shirts, and pint glasses. Oh my God. The suspect in the case has garnered sympathy and online fandom, partially because of people's problems with the health insurance industry. The majority of insured U.S. adults had at least one issue, including the denial of claims with the health insurance in the span of a year, according to a survey released in June of 23 by KFF, a nonprofit health policy research group. Amazon has pulled that merchandise from the website for violating the company's rules. It is unclear how many people may have bought items emblazoned with the phrase. However, deny, defend, depose merchandise remains on sale on eBay. The phrase itself doesn't violate rules, but items that glorify or incite violence, including those that celebrate recent murders, are prohibited, according to spokesman. Mangione spotted at McDonald's in Altoona, Pennsylvania. A McDonald's employee called the police. The restaurant's page on Google and Yelp have since been flooded with negative reviews, calling workers rats and snitches. Rats and snitches. A lot of issues with this, and I'll tell you really what they are. All right. First of all, people love calling other people rats and snitches, but they would very likely do the exact same damn thing if they had the opportunity. So they sit there, oh, they're a rat, they're a snitch. But if they saw something, they'd be the first one on the phone, and probably for a lot less. Probably for a lot less. Sometimes just for the satisfaction of seeing somebody get screwed, they'll do that. How do you think code compliance gets its calls? You've heard me go on about that before. People love calling code compliance on people. Oh, their grass is too high. Oh, they left their barrel out. Yeah, okay, bastard. And they get nothing out of that. Nothing. And D'Lo has joined us. Glad you made it. Glad you made it. Brian wants to know if snitches get stitches. Sometimes. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. Case in point, Boeing, who 2 snitches on Boeing are deceased at this point. But they would do the same thing if they had the opportunity. Then they sit there and they complain, oh, well, this CEO, he made millions of dollars. He deserved it because he was taking advantage of people. And if those people, those same people who make those accusations, were in that position of power and authority, would do the same damn thing or worse. Would do the same damn thing or worse. Very few of them would take the moral high ground and say, well, I'm making $3 million a year. I don't need a $250,000 bonus. We'll let that money go to something else. No, they'd be like, $250,000. I want half. I want a whole million. They would do the same damn thing or worse, but they're going to criticize everybody else. You hear it all the time. You hear it all the time. Garch says, might be a snitch, but the person made 2 to 3 times their salary with a phone call. Yeah, and that could be. Exactly. That's my point. People say that stuff all the time. Like Bill Gates is a good example. You hear this, oh, Bill Gates is a bastard. Bill Gates is evil. And, I'm not denouncing that because I don't like Bill Gates either. I don't care if somebody's wealthy. Just don't tell me how to live. But Bill Gates likes telling you how to live, doesn't he? He likes to experiment with people. But one of the big arguments is, oh, he's not so great. He took someone else's program and ran with it. And here's what happened. He offered, if I remember the story correctly, he knew someone who had an operating system. Hey, all I've got is 50 grand. Can I buy it from you? Dude took the contract and he went to IBM, not even knowing if they would accept it. And the rest is history. Bill was smart. He made a reasonable offer and took a big risk. And if other people had that opportunity, they'd have done the same thing. But they're going to shit on Bill Gates for that. Trust me, you got plenty of reasons to hate Bill Gates. That ain't one of them. Or Elon. Oh, Elon's not so great. He inherited money and he never invented anything. No, he took an inheritance and increased it 20-fold. That's being a good steward of his inheritance. While most people would squander an inheritance. Look at anyone who wins the lottery. There's a million videos, or what was the name of that show? How the lottery ruined my life, something like that, right? Most people are terrible stewards with money and not willing to learn, and they get it and they blow it and blow it and blow it. Oh, I'm just going to treat myself for a minute, and you buy 50 watches and 20 cars and 5 houses, and then next thing you know, you're in debt. Stupid is what that is. Elon was smart. And you see examples all the time. Paris and Perez Hilton are a good example, who, when Paris was doing the reality show, her own parents denounced her, said in an interview that they're contemplating selling the empire because they don't think their kids would be good stewards of it, that they wouldn't take care of it, that they'd end up losing it because they're selfish. Seriously. And Jane says sick people should not have to go bankrupt for medical bills. Well, yeah, fair enough. But I mean, we talked about that in length yesterday as to the reasons why that's such a broken system. There's a lot of people defrauding insurance. And these insurance companies spend a fortune trying to sort that out. Okay? That's just the reality of it. Many people who are claiming insurance, they're lying. They're ripping that system off. 2, unnecessary use of those services. How many times do people, like their kid has a cough and they go to the emergency room? Didn't need to happen. People being hypochondriacs and wasting doctors and hospitals' time and money and resources. That's expensive. And 3, medical resources, hospitals, doctors wearing out health insurance. And I used the example of my mother-in-law yesterday talking about that with her $158,000 medical bill for services that she didn't even need, that they tacked on everything they could because her card was about to rotate at the end of the month. And they wanted to get every penny off of it. And how do you fight that? You can't. You can't stop the hospital. Hey, listen, do this instead of that. Are you a doctor? No, you're not going to get away with that. The insurance company is the only buffer there, and they're made out to be evil for it. And here's League of Smoke joining us. Nature Nerd says Trump's a good steward of money, 1 million to 2 billion. Yeah, and people make the same argument about Trump as well. Oh, he inherited money. Yeah, but he wasn't necessarily stupid with it. He made some mistakes, but he continued to charge forward and build a little empire there. That's being a good steward. That's being smart. Most people are not that smart. They waste it. They burn it. They burn it up. And Nature Nerd says Killers of Flower Moon is a true story movie about false insurance claims making money. Yeah, so you get all of these systems that are ripping that off. That's why it's so damn expensive. But then if you go full tilt in the other direction and socialize medicine, it's worse. If the government's running it, you're screwed. You're really screwed. You'll get the worst possible care. Worst possible care. That's the position that we've been squeezed into. And it just kills me, the attitude. Don't know anything about this CEO, who don't know anything about his job, who would probably be more ruthless than Scrooge and Marley if they had that kind of power and authority. But they have the nerve to throw their 2 cents in there with no research, no knowledge, no experience. Kimberly says the thing about taking kids to the doctor is most school-aged kids need a doctor's note, so the absence is excused. They're only allowed X number of unexcused absences. Sometimes, well, I mean, if your kid's absent that much, there's another problem. But sometimes if you're over the limit on, like, my kid's not feeling good today, he's not going to school. But there are a lot of parents out there who they'll run their kid to the hospital or the doctor for anything. Sven says, look at the VA. It's a pile of shit. Yeah, and I've talked about that before, and VA's wasted spending. I did a whole video on it a couple of weeks ago, using my wife as an example with some of the unnecessary things that they do with her. That wastes God knows how many hundreds of millions of dollars across the board. Even the FedEx, they overnight deliver everything. Overnight deliver everything. How much does it cost to overnight deliver a notice that you already got? Sometimes 2 or 3 times. It's an incredible waste of funds, and that costs everybody. Cruising says, I always felt that we could do public basic care, such as the emergency room, broken bones, basic illness, and then privatized care for advanced issues like cancer treatment and etc. And also keep in mind, and a lot of people do not understand, especially when they have to pay for insurance, that if you're below the poverty line, you don't pay for any of that anyways. You don't pay for any of it. If you're below the poverty limit, you get free insurance, or if you have no insurance, the state picks up the bill anyway. Remember, I grew up in a housing development. My mother was a career welfare recipient. You think we paid for anything? Are you kidding me? She never paid for a damn thing. And she got dental. You can't even get dental from the VA, which irritates the hell out of me. And there are people within that system that will rip it off too. But yeah, if you're below the poverty line, you're not paying for anything. Cruising says the real screw to those between poverty line and wealth. Yeah, which is who? The middle class. They're the ones that got to pay for the insurance. Because if you're wealthy, and that's the point there, Cruising, you are correct. If you are wealthy or you're in poverty, you don't have to worry about it. If you're in poverty, you get it for free. If you're wealthy, you can afford it. If you're in the middle class, you may have some problems. You may have some problems. Speaking of which, a little more on Neely here. This kind of sort of ties in with that, because you already know about Jordan Neely. Okay. And the acquittal yesterday. This is a USA Today article. It says Jordan Neely needed help, not a death sentence. We're failing people like him. About twice a week, I commute to USA Today's office in New York City, tap my card to pay the $2.90 subway fare, walk through the turnstile, wait on the platform, and ride from my corner of Brooklyn into Manhattan. They're the same steps more than half of New Yorker workers took on their commute in 2019, an anomaly for the United States, even among other large cities. Neely, a 30-year-old former Michael Jackson impersonator, was killed on the floor of an Uptown F train in May of 2023 after fellow passenger Daniel Penny put him in a chokehold for 6 minutes. On Monday, Penny was acquitted of criminally negligent homicide by a jury, days after Judge Maxwell Wiley dismissed a charge of second-degree murder, or manslaughter, rather. People on the right have celebrated Penny, saying he acted to protect people on the subway. His supporters donated more than $3 million in legal expenses on a Christian fundraising platform. And that's kind of sickening that he would even need that much. But this is why no one will help you. It completely disregards the fact that Neely was unarmed and in mental distress. I miss my son, according to Andre Zachary, Neely's father. He told reporters outside the courthouse, my son didn't have to go through this. I didn't have to go through this either. It hurts. This case is This case is about more than public safety. It's about racial justice, homelessness, and mental health care. It's about how our systems fail vulnerable members of society. It's about a human being who lost his life in the ways he was failed while alive. Okay. And I picked this apart a little bit yesterday, but I'm going to tear it apart more today. $3 million in legal expenses is insane. This is why no one wants to help you when you're in trouble. They're going to end up in court. Who the hell can afford that? Secondly, Andre Zachary, Neely's father, I miss my son. My son didn't have to go through this. Where were you? Homeless mental patient, where were you? Well, one argument is that Neely didn't want anybody's damn help. He didn't want it. And that's part of the issue. The writer of this story is talking about racial justice, homelessness, mental health. Have you ever worked with or researched the homeless or people in mental health? I've worked with the homeless, and I worked in mental health for like 2.5 years in a residential facility. They don't want your damn help. 80% of homeless people, they don't want your help. They'll take a dollar from you. Try to help them. You better leave them alone. Especially if there's some mental health issue. You think Neely was taking his pills? You think he was going to treatment? You think if you approached him with that, he would cooperate with you? The only way they're going to get help is if you force them. Oh, well, now you're violating their human rights. You're violating their civil rights. If you force them to be helped, like how it used to be done in the United States before the 1990s. And everybody was like, oh, you can't keep them all locked up. That's not fair. You're violating their human rights, keeping them in a mental facility and forcing them to take medications. You need to let them go. And all those dangerous people were put on the streets. And they hurt people and they hurt themselves. Many of those people that were released in the 90s when the states were forced to shut down those facilities ended up dead. So where do you draw the line? What you're asking people to do is force them to take help. And again, these are the same people that are crying about this are the same ones that when you force them to take help will cry about that too. Sven says, close the VA process and approve claims, let the vet pick a private doctor, but they lose control. Yeah. JJ says, being middle class, we're always taking it up the rear. I guess that's a free proctal exam. Jane says, the penny guy was innocent. He protected on a subway train. And there's number one Marvel fan. Glad you could make it today. Jane says, why was the Neely running around drugged up and mentally ill, freaking out people? Because you can't force him to take help. Unless something happens that's well overboard, and then they end up in a facility or they end up in a group home. Again, these people that I worked with when I was in mental health were inpatients. And even they still had to mix with society. The law says so. You got to take them on field trips. You have to take them out and expose them to other people and their peer groups. They're mentally ill. They're with their peer group at the facility. They're not with their peer group at the aquarium or the zoo. Especially when you got violent people. And I had two that were really violent. Two that were really violent and one that was always trying to run away. During the time that I worked, and this is in the state of Georgia, in mental health, 2 caregivers were killed in facilities by dangerous clients, live-in facilities, killed by dangerous clients. And they're not strong. That's the common misconception. Everybody thinks that that all of these guys are like Michael Myers. They're not. When they're in the facility, if they're out running the streets, if they're homeless, that's a different story. They're off their meds, whatever. When they're in the facility, they're like kittens. They as violent as they are, there's no power behind it because of muscular atrophy and medications. They have no strength. In the one instance, one of the clients got hold to a kitchen knife, and that's how he was able to dispatch one of the caregivers, a woman. And usually it's females. It's mostly females, actually, the caregivers. Is rarely a male. The other one, I'm not sure exactly how they were killed. Also, you're not allowed to restrain them because of their human rights. You have to get a permit to restrain individuals on an individual basis from the state. So you can't even legally, you're not supposed to defend yourself. And I've used the example of a caregiver in another facility who a client had filled a cup, like one of those 44-ounce like McDonald's cups or something, with urine, and walked past a caregiver and threw it in her face as she walked by. And the caregiver smacked her, had an instinctive reaction. What would you do if somebody walked past you and suddenly you had a face full of urine? Smacked her. Charged with abuse of a ward of the state. Fired and charged and put on a registry for assault. Nature Nerd says independence is more important to a homeless person than living under a bridge. True. And Tuck says, I've been homeless, met quite a few people who weren't just going to be homeless. Some were pretty nice. One guy spent hours daily in libraries reading books, mostly history and philosophy. But, I've talked about it before. There's multiple categories of homeless people. You've got your addicts. You've got your mentally ill. You've got people who are fugitives. They're hiding from the law. You've got people who like it. It's a lifestyle to them. They don't want to be part of the system. They don't want a job. They don't want to pay bills. And then you've got the hard luck people who, life fell on them and they ended up in the street. And the problem with that is activists and the media think they're all number 5. Everybody is number 5. Oh, they just need a break. The other 4 categories don't want your damn help. They don't want it. Puck says, I think they want people like Neely running the streets in the hopes that a penny comes along to manufacture a crisis. Could be. And Sven says, I was the certified hold guy, been covered in everything. Oh, were you in mental health? Yeah, because you got to be authorized and trained, and you have to, and it's by individual, at least in the state of Georgia, by individual. And Monkey says, no wonder why teachers can't really touch students at all. And JJ says, what happened with the patients that killed the caregivers? Were they incarcerated? No, they get transferred to another facility or a different structure, a different security structure facility. How do you convict a ward of the state in mental health who's taking 36 meds every day that has an IQ of like 48? Which is why we used to put them in mental health mental facilities. But human rights violation, can't do that anymore. Can't do it anymore. Jane says, heard a few months ago here in PT. Where's PT? In psych ward, beat up a nurse. She is too nervous to come back. EMR staff and psych staff sometimes hurt on the job. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. As I catch up here. Sven says high security, which ended up being mental health a few times. I see. And I was authorized for restraint, which they wanted me to be because I was the only male employee. But again, it depended on who it was. Some people I could restrain, some I couldn't. And Sven says max security. I understand. And then there's a limit for how long it could be and what type of restraint. And it's a load of shit. It's like, yeah, I'm supposed to let them hurt me or hurt somebody else, right? Sure. This is an article written by somebody who doesn't understand, and you can't explain it to them. You can't explain things like that to people like that. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know the truth. Puck says Neely was terrorizing the subway while New York City was spending hundreds of millions on illegals. Him and others. And, he was acquitted by a jury of his peers. And here's more on that. Here's more on that because they're crying about it. And who has this article? This is a Fox News article coming up. Fox News article coming up here, talking about the same thing and talking about Alvin Bragg. It says Trump administration urged to launch a federal civil rights probe into the Manhattan DA's office after the Daniel Perry trial. Why? It was a jury of his so-called peers, right? The judge and the district attorney were trying to railroad Penny. They wanted to grind him up. And I bet you the reason the jury didn't want to do it was because they've ridden the subways and been harassed by people like Neely. And they're afraid. And someone stands up, someone takes a stand, finally. Takes a stand. He ends up in jail. He ends up spending God knows millions. They said $3 million had to be raised for attorneys. Why the hell would anybody want to get involved? I'll stand there and watch you die. That's most people's attitude. Or they'll film it for TikTok. Eric says, that's impressive. You had a job at a clinic. I've seen some of those places. It's no joke. Very hard work. Oh, yeah. Tell me about it. It was not. I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again. I worked there with my wife. She worked there for like 4 years. And she asked me if I would come and work with her because they were having a hard time finding employees who would do the job. Because the thing with me is, I don't like the job, but I'll do the job. I have a strong work ethic. Even if I don't like it, I'll do the job. And so I was there for me, like I said, probably 2.5 years, and going from having to fight people off to having coloring page contests to having to clean up a guy in the bathroom who likes to take all of his clothes off and crap on himself. It's not easy. It's not easy. And then, one of the clients that I had, I've talked about it before. He couldn't discern language, so when you talk to him, he doesn't know what the hell you're saying, and he can't speak, but he's violent. And even their own case managers don't know anything about him. That guy, he's in a wheelchair, and one arm works and one doesn't because he had a stroke. But he spends all day with that hand somewhere it's not supposed to be. So it's like staph infection central, and he'll try to scratch and grab and bite you from his wheelchair. And his case manager came to check on him one day, and I was like, okay, he's over here in front of the TV. There's a cubicle that he sits in that's for him only, that has a television to keep him occupied. It's like he won't understand anything you say. Don't get too close. He's violent. I'm right here. I'll stand by. And she ignored me and got all up on him. Oh, hey, how you doing? I'm so-and-so, and got all up in his face, screams at the top of his lungs, snatches out, grabs her breast so hard that he had the skin right through her sweater, and she couldn't get him off. And I had to go and pry his hand open while he's trying to bite my arm. But I had the sleeves. When I worked with him, I had to put sleeves on, Kevlar sleeves, fingerless Kevlar sleeves that went up to my above my elbow, so that he couldn't scratch or bite me. And I had warned her, listen, he's either going to be violent or really nasty, because he can be very sexually promiscuous also. It's like, oh God. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I had to deal with every day. Nature Nerd says, my coworker was one of the hard time homeless for a while. After divorce court took 70% of his income, he had to work 3 jobs for a while not to be homeless. Now he's maxed out union pay. Wow. Today I put up another discussion on Coffee Talk, by the way, if you have not seen it yet, about some of my experiences with the courts and visitation enforcement. Puck says, hats off to the defense attorneys. I thought for sure they'd have to settle for an all-black, homeless, lesbian, transgender jury. Wow. And Lucky is here. He says, didn't know I missed so much. Well, glad you made it. And Sven says, Kevlar, damn. Yeah. It was, they were fingerless, and it went up your arm to just above the elbow. The yellow sleeve, and it was like, I forget how many layers thick. And Puck says, was the guy rabid? No, mentally ill, severely mentally ill. And it was actually caused by a shunt. Because it was after they put a shunt in his brain, which is a drainage tube. It was after that he had the stroke, and boom, his mind was gone. And there's no lawsuits or anything, because of course he was a ward of the state at the time. Tuck says she was arrogant. Yeah, she learned a hard lesson that day. And Jericho says, crazy how almost primitive the conditions are. Yeah. But I mean, civil rights investigation into what? These people They probably ride the subway. They probably scared of the homeless people too. It was a jury of so-called peers. I thought the jury system was supposed to work. So why would there be a civil rights investigation into the judge and the district attorney? Hell, the district attorney is black. I mean, what what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Incredible. Yeah, I could go on and on all day about my experiences with the mental health. I mean, you all know I've had a lot of hats on. A lot of hats. Monkey says, I wonder if you say any stories of what you did at the residential service facility, like what you did when you were a bus driver for the public schools. Kind of the same rules, because you can't touch them either. At least I was authorized with certain individuals that were violent. But with the public school, and I've actually done school bus videos because, again, professional history. Director of a daycare, director of a YRC2 for juvenile justice. I drove the school buses for Durham School Services and for Laidlaw School Services. But yeah, and the funny thing too is every time I went back, because I worked for Laidlaw, then I went and worked for Durham, and then I went and worked for Durham again some years later. And every time the training was shortened even more. There was less and less. Kimberly says they weren't expecting that outcome. Try to backpedal now. Yeah, because they wanted to convict him. They wanted to pat themselves on the back. And of course, I've got a lot of other crappy jobs that I've had, going all the way back to childhood. I've been working since I was like 9 or 10 years old, cleaning apartments, landscaping, moving wheelbarrows full of dirt around before I was even like 12 years old, cleaning apartment buildings, things like that. Puck says, were you ever bitten when you worked at Walmart, or did you still have the Kevlar sleeves? No, I did. I worked as a stocking clerk at Walmart, putting stuff on the shelves. Third shift, long time ago. But no, nobody bit me there. But there was a guy who used to sneak into the store and crap in the urinals. Jane wants to know what other countries do with mentally ill folks. Lock them up in a mental hospital like we used to. That's what they do. They lock them up. We're the ones that let them all run the streets because, hey, they've got human rights. You can give them their human rights in a care facility where they cannot hurt themselves or someone else. One of the clients that I had could not control eating. I know. I guess we'll just save the rest of the news stories for tomorrow because we're going on and on here. But that's okay. I don't mind. Actually, I don't mind if you're curious. But he could not stop eating. He would eat until he puked. So you had to absolutely measure everything that he got to eat. He will eat and eat and eat until he throws up and then keep eating. If that guy was on his own, he would die that way. I had another guy, if he was cut, he would be obsessed. He had a cut on his finger, and we had to wrap his whole hand up to keep him from trying to pick it open. He couldn't leave it alone. He'd take the Band-Aid off, pick the wound, and blood would start pouring out. We had to wrap up his whole hand for a couple of days to keep him from touching it. Can you imagine if this guy was out on the street and cut himself somewhere? He'd bleed to death or get an infection and die. It's incredible. But yeah, we're supposed to let these people run around. There's a point by which it's not safe to just say, yeah, human rights, let them run around. I mean, why else do they put people in jail? They got human rights too, technically, right? But you make them take meds. You make them stay locked up. Nature Nerd says, don't like the propaganda films that got rid of the mental hospitals. One of the main ones was actually One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. That's one of the main ones that made people look harshly at the mental health services system. That's one of the main ones. But aside from Jack Nicklaus's character, aside from his character, who was there for the wrong reasons because he only pretended to be screwed up so he could get out of jail, most of the rest of those people were there for a reason, and that's what's overlooked. And Jane says it was a good movie. It was a good movie. It was a good film. But I mean, and you know, the shock therapy and stuff like that, which by the way, they still do. They still have that. It's just not the same the way that it's administered. But that's just the reality of it. That some people, they need to be put away for their own safety, if not everyone else's. But anyways, with that, we're at the top of the hour, so I will go ahead and start signing off. Again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk. Still got Miss Kitty sleeping in the chair behind me. And you can find us Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube on Coffee Talk and Prepper University. You can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat. You can find me on fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta. Thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the